Hey, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Frank About Health. Today is February 19th, 2026. Starting with today's episode, Frank About Health will occur in three segments. That means segments one and two will be about 20 minutes each, and then the final one will be about 15 minutes, with about 3 minutes to sign off, wrap up, let you know about upcoming events, so forth and so on. This is to conserve a lot of energy with respect to content that we want to communicate to you, and at the same time to provide you with specifics, especially when it comes to your health. Now, today's episode is about healthcare storytelling. The reason why I thought it was important is because healthcare, like I have mentioned last week during my show with both Phyllis Quinlan and Lynn, oh my God, I don't remember her name exactly right now. Lynn Rapsilver, there you go. She and I and Phyllis will be doing a nursing webinar starting next week for 3 episodes on Frank About Health. And therefore, I wanted to use this episode as a primer to be able to show how I'm using Frank About Health as a storytelling, education, communications platform and give people the big picture when it comes to your healthcare. Now, I guess that being said, if I'm going to issue a disclaimer, it's to indicate that this is information is food for thought, not to dissuade you from your ongoing treatment protocols with your ongoing doctor, PCP, specialist, physician, mental health professional, so forth and so on. These are not the views of talkradio.nyc or of Frank About Health, but rather it is information for your healthcare, especially as we are going forward through 2026, which is still recovering through all the cutbacks and cost reductions and minimal support that we have started to have as a result of the big beautiful bill that was signed into law in July of 2025. As you all recall, I did during the last 3 months of 2025 do a Voices of Disruption campaign because there were a lot of healthcare advocates, podcasters, disruptors, as I call them, doing what they can to help raise the healthcare funds that they need themselves, or even find the right research and find the right information that one could learn from and bring to your hospital, your doctor, and really do what you can to maintain your quality of life. Therefore, I'm just going to do an overview about basically why I chose to create Frank About Health 5 years ago, as well as diversify. I have everyone knows out there that I've created a documentary called Being Frank for a Healthy Future, as well as working on some upcoming healthcare events and innovations and appearances on other podcasts that I'd like people to find out about. So you can see not that I'm just advocating for healthcare, but that I'm showing you that in each of my appearances, I'm talking about healthcare from a different point of view. And it could be the point of view of a patient, the point of view of an advocate, the point of view of someone who is a disruptor and trying to do something about it. And what that really does tell me through lived experience is that's how we all have to be in order to maintain our life and our health care, our health and wellness. Health and wellness is a commodity in the United States of America, but that's not how it's to be treated. It's not a resource that you can choose to invest in, or if you don't have the funds, neglect. It is something that you need in order to have a life, to have a career, to have choices, to have pretty much all the needs to have the best form of lifestyle that you want or dream of. Now, it's just that most people are not trained in that kind of thinking or in that kind of system of thought. They look at the doctor as an authoritarian figure or someone that you need to obey, or they figure if they're wrong, then they just, made a mistake. But you don't have to pay the consequences for those mistakes. You have to be prepared and vigilant and do what you can to get all of the necessary information so you can get the best healthcare treatment or best preventative care. After all, the predominant amount of time in our life is in prevention of illness and other kinds of possible traumas. So, the thing that I would like to address overall in this first segment is just the importance of transparency and the importance of being frank with yourself about your health. And I did take a few notes. So if you don't mind, instead of talking very impromptu or very over the top, I'm just going to give you some bullet points that my trusty chatbot here on AI, using AI, has created for me, so it can serve as a form of education in what I'm about to tell you. Now, transparent communication must exist across media, education, clinicians, and policymakers, but the weight of responsibility is different in every lane. So, yet, even though I've given you four categories of different types of resources for one's healthcare, the real resource is yourself. Remember that it all begins and ends with you. From the information you take in, the information you choose to accept or reject, and also the choices you need to make. The number one group that you can deal with is your doctor or your nurse. They are the primary translators of care. They call them the front line or the essential workers. They come in the form of physicians and nurse practitioners and registered nurses, care coordinators. Their role is to explain diagnosis in simple, everyday, plain language, disclose risks and alternatives, clarify costs, admit uncertainty when it exists, and when transparency fails, trust collapses the fastest. Now, trust is the number one thing you must have in any medical relationship. If you don't have trust in your hospital or your doctor or your insurance company for that matter, they are not to be dealt with. You need to obviously have a sense of trust in yourself with whatever knowledge or information you already have about your healthcare issues, whether they are of the mental health variety or physical health variety, and then try to find that individual or individuals that will be able to reciprocate that trust and provide you with the accurate information that you seek. Now, I have lived my whole life with epilepsy, and I've made that very clear with all of my audiences in the almost 170 shows that I have done on Frank About Health. But epilepsy is only one aspect of my life. I have had history of caregiving for both an Alzheimer's patient, my cousin, and a cancer patient, my father. I've had history of knee injuries that to this day I now suffer arthritis and have had to go through physical therapy and having to deal with the possibilities of surgery one day, which I'm trying at my best to avoid. I also, when I came back to talkradio.nyc in 2021, I also had lived through what it was like to be during the COVID pandemic and spend 5 months on lockdown with my entire family and do what I can to make sure that all the information was available, including the vaccines, the testing, the 6 foot distance, everything that most people were either being haphazard about or they were living by the rule of the law. We had a governor at that time that had daily host meetings. I'm sorry, not host meetings, daily chat meetings about the circumstances in our city or in our state, that New York State in particular, that we needed to be on guard for so that we can prevent spread and prevent and hope garnish herd immunity. He was a role model at that time for our country during the pandemic. And I think that was part of my inspiration to create the podcast, Frank About Health, or at least come back because it already existed, but come back and advocate more for people's health and wellness and maintain quality of life more as the focus rather than removing stigmas, which was my original intention. Now, each of these were not stories that I created. They were stories that were existing in our society, in our country. And I wanted to be an amplifier of those stories by having several guests and several influencers. And if you remember Phyllis Quinlan, she was my co host for over 40 episodes during 2 of the seasons of Frank About Health. And she was amplifying from the clinician's point of view, and it just felt like, okay, now we're getting somewhere with transparency and we're getting somewhere with trying to do what we can to create that comfort zone for most patients and most even medical professionals to have a place to really reflect on whatever research they were involved in or whatever concerns they were trying to focus on. You know, that importance of storytelling, if you will, which I have done weekly on Talk Radio, is a way of building community, is a way of reconnecting with everyone that really just wants the bare facts and not the misinformation that does tend to go on within the media. Now, if you have an extensive education, as I do, from 3 different universities, what you tend to do is you pick and choose what works best to fit your needs. But then there's not my situation common to everyone. There are people who don't even have enough awareness or the right tools to be able to understand what their healthcare needs are. So then I was hoping to be like that beacon so people can come to Frank About Health and get the information that they were seeking, as also discussed by my various guests on the show. All of this was also inspired not just by Sam Leibowitz at talkradio.nyc, but my dear friend, the late Retha Gray, who was a big health advocate while also being a successful actress in California. And then there was also at that time my partnership with Hilton Worldwide Holdings, which was very much involved in the New York State area of creating the first ever essential worker hotels as a place to live while they were out every day on the front lines trying to help everyone during the COVID pandemic. And therefore, I created a different story. It was my documentary, which I also thank the talkradio.nyc family for helping me create, along with Hilton at the time, because we were trying to do what we can to build that tribe that would work together to be able to keep everyone informed about what was going on in our healthcare and in our society. Then, in particular, 2025 was a challenging year of disruption. Disruption which was man made, in my view, and simultaneously also the fundamental technology shifts that were going on with AI and with other robotics, like for surgery and things like that. But what created the disruption was simple fact of money. Where do you invest your money in healthcare? And we had an administration that was doing what they can to pull away investments from healthcare and to cut back healthcare resources, minimize the value of your insurance, reduce the co-payments on things like nutrition or acupuncture, and make you pay more out of pocket, or increase deductibles, or make you have penalties just for missing one appointment. You know, that does not sound like healthcare. That sounds like pure disruption. So you need those people who are faced with it, especially those living with chronic illness, that can do what they can to create a new ecosystem that would do what they can to be able to keep a balance for themselves and for everybody that was following them. Oh, I just got a greeting from YouTube, John Fulbright. If anyone remembers, I had my friend John, the bee venom therapist, appear on talkradio.nyc back in September. And he is saying, would love to stay, but I'm late for a meeting. Okay, well, by the way, John, I don't know if you're hearing this right now or if you've gone to your meeting, but I do intend to bring you on Frank About Health. I want to talk more about your bee venom therapy, and there's a lot more in store in how I would like to create that show. So just be on the lookout for either a phone call or an email from me. And I thank you for watching. So shout out there anyone who wants to see the episode that John had appeared on. I think there were two episodes he appeared. It was again available on my YouTube playlist with talkradio.nyc. And it's also available on LinkedIn and Facebook. Again, you would have to, well, actually, more on YouTube and LinkedIn if you're looking back at episodes in September about Sting Your Way to Health. That was the name of the episode. So be on the lookout for that. All right, sorry for the segue. Overall, that's an example of transparency. That is an example of working with your community and tribe of influencers, podcasters, health advocates that are doing all they can to continue updating each other on new techniques, new innovations to try to cure diseases like, in his case, Lyme disease, or deal with your mental health, or deal with arthritis, or deal with other kinds of clinical issues that non-traditional medicine or not Western medicine may not be able to help. Sometimes you need to do the alternative route, especially when faced with disruption. All right, let me see what else I can tell you about the media. Media is your amplifier. Media is not always your best place to go, so you have to pick and choose what media do you listen to. We all have our traditional media channels. There's ABC, there is also CNN and MS Now, and then they have all these new ones, Newsmax and other shows. But some of them are partisan, some of them are biased, some of them are attributing to specific causes. So therefore, a lot of people like to go the individual route, whether they go into blogs or whether they go into podcasts or whether they go into other kinds of social media channels that are created for healthcare wellness information, especially if they are hosted by medical systems or if they're hosted by doctors or professional colleagues with the AMA or with HIPAA or with the New York State Department of Health and Human Services. You know, you have a little different type of collegiate information that you can gather, but it never is fully complete unless you do your own research as well. Then I call it about education. Like I said earlier, education is your foundation builder. It pretty much provides you with health literacy, preventative knowledge, and gives you skills in scientific reasoning. And most people can't evaluate what doctors or media say unless they have that foundation. I'm proud to say I do through both New York University as well as Fordham University and what I call my hub, NYU Langone Health, because they are also a teaching hospital. And of course, I bring in and reference pop culture every now and then, and healthcare storytelling on Grey's Anatomy, which I binge watched like crazy during COVID, became a foundation as well. Again, all dramatized, but it does create some of the real world situations as to how a community bands together to try to find the common cure, the common goal, the common cause, as well as try to bring everybody together, even in the face of crisis or death or trauma. So, storytelling is a lot of facets. It happens through media and education and TED Talks and buying books and reading books and me having the fortune to be in the audience of The View several times. Today was actually one of those times to just state a fact, because then you get to see other aspects of how certain people in various groups of our social system view healthcare. And I can say honestly, from my appearances in the audience and the guests that they've had, that there is a real grounding force at that particular show that really looks at the transparency of healthcare information and resources, which has inspired me to go forward with creating new events and new kinds of platforms in the near future, which I'm going to spend more time about talking about in segments 2 and 3 of this episode. And we are about to take our first break. If for any reason you felt that I had been rambling or there are things that you did not understand, please feel free to give me a comment on YouTube or on LinkedIn or Facebook, and I will do what I can to clarify. Or you can email me at frankrharrison1@gmail.com. But in the meantime, as we continue to talk about healthcare storytelling on this episode of Frank About Health on talkradio.nyc, as well as our social media channels, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, and YouTube. Please stay tuned.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hey everybody, and welcome back. Now, I have just shown you another example of a disruptor that has been on Frank About Health prior to the Christmas holidays. The actual air date was December 18th, 2025. Matthew Zachary, or by the name MZ, a brain cancer survivor, given 6 months to live, and 25 years later, he's still here. and what he's done after surviving such, oh, I can't even begin to describe what kind of declaration he got from his doctor. But after surviving that, he went ahead and not only created his current podcast, Out of Patience, Patients, that pretty much is audio only in most cases. And from what I understand, it's the longest held healthcare podcast in the industry since 2007. His viewership or audioship, if you will, or listenership, is on an average 1 million listeners a day. I think he's global. But as such, he's been able to take that platform and leverage himself by actually, as a musician, a piano player, as well as other kinds of other instruments that he has been involved in, has been able to perform concerts in front of the halls of Congress in Washington, D.C., and he will be performing at Lincoln Center in April as he goes and fights for cancer awareness and cancer fundraising on his own with his team of people. He has created a PAC, a political action committee. I did show you on the slideshow, We the Patients is the name of his committee, and they are doing what they can to help with our upcoming election, which is going to put a voting block on those representatives who do not care about our healthcare system. So I am truly a supporter of him. I'm not in a position to endorse him, although I can say I am going to make sure that when he does his concert, Frank About Health will be there. We will stream it live. And we will also have him come back on the show to promote it either before, during, or after. But he is definitely a humanitarian. He's an outright advocate. He is an individual that I call a true disruptor and who definitely made one of life's threatening diagnosis into his weapon, into his superpower. And he definitely has moved a lot of mountains in his neck of the woods. And I'm sure he's going to be able to achieve his goal of bringing a lot of funding and awareness of how to beat cancer, how to raise money for it, and who knows, maybe even develop enough funds to continue the research that was done at the NIH and at the CDC to be able to do what they can to cure cancer. So that being said, I needed to show that. But I also have learned in the last few weeks since he was on the show the power of the nurses, the nurse practitioners, especially someone like Phyllis Quinlan, who is a fighter for nursing education, nursing policy. She also, if you remember her as my co-host, we have talked about the Share the Care organization. She works a lot with caregivers. So I want to show a clip from the episode we did last week, which would be able to give you an understanding of how Frank About Health is going to be doing healthcare storytelling on for 3 episodes on the nursing profession and in particular the nursing practitioner, because it'll be serving as both an education and webinar platform and even provide education for how you can become a nurse practitioner if that is of interest to you. For those of you in the New York City area, must have known recently about a nursing strike. 4 hospital systems in particular were involved, 3 of which have since settled. One of them is still in negotiations. But the point of the matter is that nurses are definitely valuable in our healthcare system. They are what maintain the morale, what maintain the peace and the care when your main care provider isn't available because he or she has other patients to see and are probably dealing with other serious cases, especially when you're in recovery mode, for example. So having your nurse by your side during continual caregiving is always of value. I remember saying, and this is before I show the scene from the show from last week, I remember saying, again, another pop culture reference, the show MASH. Um, Basically, the nurses were there to be able to help the surgeons during wartime, in particular the Korean War. But the whole story of nurses, which was undervalued, again, 70s television, it didn't have the kind of storytelling that it has today in that profession. But it really showed that it's a thankless profession, but at the same time, it is one that is these are your heroes. These are your essential workers that were especially there during COVID, and that was only 6 years ago. So I'm hoping that the next 3 episodes of Frank About Health with both Phyllis and Lynn will do what they can to really show you how Frank About Health is advocating for the profession. So if you stay tuned, I will share a clip from the show and you will all get an understanding about what we are going to be offering to the audience in the next 3 weeks.
Those of your listeners who have listened to the show knows I've been writing a book forever, and I finally finished it. And the book is going to be addressing disruptive behavior in the workplace. It's going to be the missing puzzle of a healthy work environment, really understanding and effectively managing bullying and incivility in the workplace. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it's coming out in May. So thank you for the moment to let me plug that. But Lynn, tell us.
Sure.
You have an article coming out and you also have a book coming out.
Yes, so I'm working on a book. It's going to be a tutorial for nursing students to learn about coding, billing, and documentation because it's not very well taught in school. The curriculum is so dense, but this is such an important piece because we have to understand how we generate revenue for the places that we work and how we can negotiate better wages, better opportunities. And this book will help to do that. And we're also having a conference in Tampa for the nurse practitioners through the National Nurse Practitioner Entrepreneur Network. And that is going to be a business-focused conference. So we'll have topics that are really relevant, legal, financial practices, and vendors that specialize in NP information. So we're hoping that a lot of people will take advantage of that as well.
Nice. And I guess I can say that not next week, but starting with the week after that, for about 3 weeks, the three of us have agreed to do a mini series on the nurse practitioner or the nursing profession as a whole. Probably, if it's doable, based on what is being released in the near future, we could actually create one of those 3 episodes as a webinar and teach the coding or teach some of the aspects of the nurse practitioner field that could also access your audience of nurse practitioners who could learn a lot with both you, Phyllis, and myself helping moderate things. We could have live interaction with those people who may ask questions. So I'm looking forward to using the Frank About Health platform from about, the 26th, I believe, till about March 12th, something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Let me very quickly here. So we are going to skip the 19th and start on the 26th. Yes.
Yes.
And
So
I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get a webinar format going, but we certainly can give highlights and overviews and maybe answer
A little
some great
pearls of
questions.
wisdom.
Yeah,
Pearls of
Exactly.
answer
wisdom.
some great questions. You bet.
Yeah.
exactly. And so, of course, we will be talking about that together offline over the next week or so we can prepare for that. But ladies and gentlemen, we are literally 1 minute to ending. So I just want to say thank you. Okay, I'm back. So overall, I'm just trying to exemplify another example of healthcare storytelling. But this case, especially when it comes to the nurse practitioner, it's not just storytelling, it is educating. It is creating a whole pathway for those that want to be freedom fighters when it comes to one's healthcare. And the nurses are notorious for having done that. And simultaneously, there are a lot of other people that are entrepreneurial in nature, like myself, that may not be a medical professional, hence my disclaimers for every show that I do. But I like to share my healthcare stories, my lived experience as a caregiver and as a patient with epilepsy or living with epilepsy, because I have enough wisdom, knowledge, experience, and education to help transfer that over to even understanding other illnesses that I may or may not have been exposed to, but that we can get the information and resources needed to you. So healthcare storytelling is kind of a misnomer because you're not telling fictional stories. You're telling true stories in general as to how people have different healthcare issues and how they live with them, treat them, resolve them, or not resolve them. Or if you are looking at the type of healthcare situation that it is, keep in mind that mental health has always been something that's hidden from common view because of people worried about shame or guilt or what people think of them. But yet, if you're not resolving your physical health problem, you're only exacerbating your mental health problem. You get burnout, you get defensive, you get trauma responses like PTSD, you get triggered easily by simple conversations, or even the news makes you cry much quicker because you can be empathic to what you're seeing on the news. Healthcare storytelling, I think, would be the right description. Being transparent about one's health. And that's what we all need to do, especially when still combating ongoing disruption by our country. You have to own your healthcare even more than ever, whether it's taking additional courses, having in-depth conversations with your primary care physician, doing more medical research on your own through podcasts, through Wikipedia, through getting books on the subject matter. I will admit, The View has a lot of healthcare oriented topics, and if you're in the audience, you get to take home a free copy of the book from the guest if it was a healthcare professional, or you just buy the book that you see advertised. If you all remember, there was a few episodes ago when it was a nutrition episode provided by myself and Jose Dennis when we were talking about GLP-1 drugs, and it was a scene with Oprah Winfrey talking about her experience. And I featured the clip and talked about the book enough, which allows you to understand that GLP-1 drugs have a neurological component to them so that you can stop overeating and hopefully lose the weight while you're also taking the drugs and reducing your intake of foods that are not healthy for you, especially if you have a comorbidity. It could be cardiac, it could be diabetes, it could be sleep apnea. I mean, a whole host of things. But the whole point of healthcare is to balance your life with the good and the bad of how one's life, mind, body, spirit, and soul all interact throughout your lifespan and can be easily disrupted by external factors, whether it is misinformation or family members that are not transparent with you, or getting the wrong education, or not being sure about what your illness is. I mean, when you have that kind of world that we're living in, you need to constantly keep yourself informed. So healthcare storytelling should be what you seek to share with people on a daily basis about your health, in addition to stories about the weather and stories about your travel plans and stories about your business and stories about your relationships or whatever. Healthcare is, without your health, you can't build wealth, right? But healthcare is keeping yourself balanced and preventing possible illnesses or trauma. If you think of it that way, from the top down rather than the bottom up, which is only focus on your healthcare when you get sick, then you have much more of an anchor to be able to get the right preparation, right information, and right support within your family and friends and other colleagues so that you can be able to live an excellent quality of life. All right, so I'm not sure when our next break is. I think it's coming soon, but I will say that in the last 40 minutes, I have described that for me and my life, the way that I've been able to create a platform of health storytelling is, number one, through this podcast, Frank About Health. Number two, through my documentary, Being Frank for a Healthy Future. Number three, by talking about Matthew Zachary and his upcoming concert in Lincoln Center in April. Number four, I showed you his book that is now on pre-order that talks about We the Patients. Number five, which you'll find out in the next section, is about podcasts that I have been a guest on and that I will be appearing on pretty soon over the next few months. And I also did talk about The View, and I also did talk about the upcoming webinar series, with Phyllis and Lynn, which will be here on talkradio.nyc. And it should be a productive 3 weeks. I really hope all you nurses and nursing practitioners out there really do what you can to attend those 3 episodes of the show, because remember, you can't get accurate healthcare storytelling without the best audience, and you, the nurses out there, are the best audience for what we will be talking about during those 3 weeks. I was glad to see also earlier John Fulbright, a unique individual that had been struck by lightning and then ended up contracting Lyme disease, and through his own raising of honeycombs built a whole bee venom therapy treatment in order to cure his Lyme disease. That's an example of an individual that just like 360 degrees from patient to cure was able to help modify and balance out his life. These are the kind of individuals that I'm hoping to see participate in the next 3 weeks right here on Frank About Health. All right, so let me see if I have left anything out. I would say that, there are other events that are coming up in April. Actually, March 19th. The documentary Suck It Up Buttercup will be released in Baltimore, Maryland, thanks to Tom Ingenio, who's been on this show before, and at the same time was able to work with Dr. Todd Otten, who had created a whole documentary on our healthcare system and how many weaknesses are in it, and so many challenges and problems have been created, and what the individuals interviewed on that documentary are doing to combat that. Matthew Zachary is one of those individuals. Mark Cuban is another. That is an example, a key example of healthcare storytelling. So as I get more information on that actual event, I'm not directly involved in it other than promoting it, but as I find out more information about it, I will share that along. Okay, that being said, we are 2 minutes to our next break. I think we'll take it right now so we can really spend the remaining section of the show talking about what I, Frank R. Harrison, will be doing over the next 3 months to be able to continue and expand upon all my healthcare storytelling right here on talkradio.nyc, as well as other guest platforms that I will be on. And I look forward to catching up with all of you then at that time. So please stay tuned. On Frank About Health, we're not just talking healthcare. We're managing disruption and innovation. Over the last 4 years, I've taken you from epilepsy and COVID to mental health, caregiving, and now the front lines of healthcare transformation. Stay tuned for a healthier future as we bring on the innovators, professionals, storytellers, and advocates who show you how to own your healthcare every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Omega-3 supplementation for brain health. You will see some pretty cool information on there, and I believe it's a 6-week cycle.
Yeah, and it's true because he started this nutrition program in September, so maybe what I was seeing was about 6 to 8
the culmination of that. Yeah.
Right. And a lot more almonds and a lot more electrolyte water and stuff like that.
It's a stupid little tricks like that make a big difference, and we just don't have that. But to Tom's earlier point, 200 years ago,
what's ironic?
Every old lady on your block would have known that.
And everything we've been talking about shows still a dependency factor on our government. And that is when you're healthy. We're dependent on regulations for taxes and the economy and airfare and whatever. But when it comes to healthcare, there's no one you can depend on except yourself. So you have to mirror that with your doctor. I treat all my doctors as if they're colleagues. I will. And if I don't like what they're saying, I say, I'm sorry, you're not good for me. It's been fun. Got to go.
I went to a concierge doc.
I will give you $1 if you show up in a lab coat.
Yeah.
And take a photo. Oh, yeah, that would be great. Next doctor you go to, just walk in with a lab coat.
I've been an avid viewer of Grey's Anatomy, so I would know
there
exactly
you
who I
go.
would
You
dress
got
up
all the-
as.
Yeah,
there is a whole scrubs line around Grey's Anatomy. You can get all the doctors have their own scrubs.
I think I've seen that. Yes, that's true.
Which is
That's true.
peak capitalism in my mind.
Yeah, well, I mean, who
then
doesn't
again,
want to
like what I
have
was
the
saying
Grey's
earlier,
Anatomy
That's
scrubs?
been on the air for 22 years.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Interesting, because everyone wants to know how to get healthcare information, even if it's dramatized, because they're
Right.
getting information. They're not finding
Well,
it
I mean,
where they
8
should
out
be
of
finding
10
it.
shows are fucking medical dramas, and the other 2 are
So the other 3 are
crime
how to
drama.
kill people.
Yeah, like,
True, but
you know,
their shelf life is 5 to 7 years. Then they go, but Grey's
Yeah.
Anatomy's been here for 22 years. I think personally it needs to go soon, but from the perspective of everything I've heard about the impact it's created, especially during COVID, you've got people at higher rates of enrollment in medical schools because of that show.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
so
crazy.
I mean, we just hope that they're not doing things the Meredith Grey way, that they're actually learning how to be the best doctors that they can be, First of all, I'd like to apologize for the F word that was used. That was not on this show. It was used on Irreverent Health. That's the podcast that I appeared on, recorded on the 19th of December and debuted a week and a half ago on YouTube or on the Irreverent Health website, which I also showed during the commercial break. You also can find it on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. And overall, it talks about how healthcare is something that we are all struggling in finding the right information for, which is why I think in the name Irreverent, it implies that they can go ahead and use a lot of F-bombs and other kind of words along the show. And trust me, on that episode, there were plenty. It was kind of freeing for me to actually use them as well. But I must say that at least I got the message across that when it comes to your healthcare, you treat your doctors as if they're colleagues. And if they're not giving you the right information, then you go find another colleague to help you with the case of who you are and what your healthcare needs are. I will also be appearing on another podcast called Invisible Condition. If you remember on Frank About Health a few weeks ago, I had a guest talk about invisible illness, and his name, Jeff Pearson. Thank you very much. Basically, it was a reciprocal effort. He appeared here to talk about his life with hydrocephalus and all the surgeries he's had to deal with to put shunts in his brain to drain the cerebrospinal fluid that continues to flood his brain, just like I had spoken about my invisible condition of epilepsy. I go more in depth on that particular show. What's unique is that we talked earlier on this episode of Frank about health in terms of platforms. His show is known as a healthcare television show. It doesn't appear as a podcast. It appears on E360 TV, which is a internet television platform that is available on Roku devices as well as on Amazon Fire, if you've got the internet television platform there. And there are other different platforms that you can find it on. And of course, there's YouTube. But the point is, it's less about social media and more about having an actual live, commercial-free opportunity to speak about health and wellness on a network that is reaching close to 2 million people a week. Now, that being said, I've already been in conversations with them in particular to distribute the documentary Being Frank for a Healthy Future, because it would help their catalog of health and wellness programs on the air, especially Invisible Condition. I think that when my appearance on E360 TV and YouTube happens on February 27th, you will get to learn more, even more specific details about my life with epilepsy, including one near fatal incident that occurred when I was about 17 years old. I haven't really talked about it that much right here on Frank About Health because I've been trying to keep epilepsy as a health and wellness experience that I've learned to live through and therefore become an advocate for. But, if anything, it was kind of interesting to reflect on that healthcare story of mine, which I don't know, people have said I could write books about it, but I'm not sure it's worthy of a book the way that, for example, Matthew Zachary's story is. So that being said, if anything, I hope you tune into that. And I could tell you that in April, I will also be on another show called Seizing Your Greatness, which explains the routes that I've taken in my life and career to be able to explain why Frank About Health was born and what I have done to try to diversify that podcast into other kinds of content, like the documentary, like my plans to eventually turn it into a book one day, or maybe create other spin off podcasts that would be able to focus on specific illness. Like I know that Jose Dennis and his ability to do caregiving for my father for the past 18 months has teased the idea of spinning off a nutrition show, but a lot more practice has to be applied to that. And I have to have the right audience and the right fit, the right network that's going to be able to make sure it gets distributed. For now, it's a segment that I bring on occasion, not just to Frank About Health, but to other shows on the talkradio.nyc network. And some of those segments are available on one of my YouTube channels if anyone wants to retrieve them. But more importantly, just look at the episodes that I have done on nutrition on my playlist, and you can have a chance to get that almond encrusted salmon for your brain health, or maybe the Mediterranean veggie bowl for your anemia, and other kinds of special nutritious foods to help you with your health care and your mental health care. Let's see what else I can tell you. I am also involved right now. This is my Fordham alumni sweatshirt with the Fordham Gabelli School of Business, and I'm involved in working with a lot of MBA students currently in delivering healthcare solutions, financial healthcare solutions to discuss, especially during the crisis that we're in with a lot of our funding and our insurance being cut back. I will be speaking at panel discussions and speaking events at the Gabelli School throughout March. There will be a healthcare conference on the 23rd of March, and I will be just kind of co-hosting with the club organizers different financial solutions that everyone can look into, including one that I wanted to create a while back that I'm thinking about recreating, but that's going to take the right people to make happen. And that's just a work in progress. But this is what I do beyond the podcast. I do have a healthcare role outside of talkradio.nyc, and I've been expanding that slowly but surely. And I can say that thanks to Tom Ingenio, who you just saw me speaking to on Irreverent Health, as well as Matthew Zachary, and as well as Anshar Seraphim, I am able to diversify my exposure in the healthcare space to not just podcasting. So again, the importance of healthcare storytelling is to be able to own your media platforms outright and do what you can to have them distributed to the appropriate audiences. The webinar that we're going to be having during the next 3 weeks is definitely targeted to the nursing audience out there. It could be within the hospital systems. It could be within the network that that Lynn Rapsilber was creating, the Entrepreneur Network for Nurse Practitioners. Or it could be any of my podcast audience out there who could join in and be able to contribute to the educational experience that we will be presenting. Overall, the last 3 segments of this show were to show you my past, my present, and my future. The past, which continues to be the present, really, is the importance of keeping Frank About Health alive and doing what it can to be the go-to for my transparency, my frankness of it all, and at the same time to continue the elevation of distribution for that documentary. And then, of course, to also make sure that I walk the walk and talk the talk by speaking at different events, going to my alma mater, and delivering what I can in terms of new solutions, and hopefully being in more audiences of The View to get some more ideas and interactions. And I guess fundamentally, like the way I met with Sam, networking is key. and just continue to keep networking with different individuals, different guests, different podcasters, and continue to build that community, because together as a community, being frank about health means just being transparent with each other, and we all work together as individuals in this chaotic society to help each other with our health and wellness. It's going to be an interesting year, and I'm only hoping that March and April I will see some pivots and some changes and some opportunities arise. But again, I am being very specific about making sure that the people that are on Frank About Health are true healthcare advocates and fighters. And I also want to, excuse me, give a shout out there to Dale Atkins, because she also created not a fictional story, but a whole story called The Turquoise Butterfly, about a grandmother and her relationship to her granddaughter, and how she was being able to continue the family narrative through that dynamic. She appeared on the Today Show. The book became a #1 bestseller at this point. And I'm hoping that she comes back to Frank About Health as well. These are the kinds of individuals that I am anchoring in with, to be able to give all of you out there the best healthcare information that I could provide. Also, I've had the opportunity to talk to the person this past week where all of this began, and that is Sam Leibowitz himself. And I have already targeted him to become one of my guests in March. I don't know the exact date, but The Conscious Consultant and Frank About Health will definitely have a show together in the coming weeks, more than likely after the 3-week webinar that is coming ahead. All right, I see that we are 3 minutes to ending. I want to thank everybody for listening to this whole story of my history of healthcare storytelling. I hope you have a chance to watch my appearance on Irreverent Health, to stay tuned for my appearance on Impossible Conditions on the 27th of February. And then I will give you guys the dates when my other podcast appearance is released, as well as the dates of the concert that Matthew Zachary will be performing. And one more announcement. Anshar Seraphim will be speaking at Yale University on the 20th of March. It's a virtual seminar on living your best life with all of your cognitive and neurological wherewithal. I'm not specifically sure of the title of it yet, but when I find that out, I will further promote it right here on Frank About Health. We still have about another month before his appearance. Thank you, Jesse, behind the scenes, for engineering this show. And thank you again, Sam, for everything you have done this past almost 5 years. And I will just be signing off now and saying stay tuned for that webinar over the next 3 weeks. I will be meeting with Phyllis tomorrow to start planning the syllabus, if you will. And I look forward to continuing to be frank about health with all of you. Look at my website, frankrharrison.com, or email me at frankrharrison1@gmail.com if you have any questions. And then again, look for my playlist on YouTube for Frank About Health, and my documentary on YouTube, Being Frank for a Healthy Future. And I will continue to provide more information as it comes. So everybody, you all have a great week, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.